Namaste. It is an honor to have Pandita Anuradha Palji perform for the Triveni Music Festival in the celebration of women as we celebrate Navratri. Anuradha Palji is a tabla virtuoso, a multi-percussionist, and a music composer who has been described as the first professional female tabla player by Encyclopedia Britannica and the Limca Book of Records. A disciple of Ustad Allah Rakha and Zakir Hussain, she performed at the Woodstock Festival in 2008 with her world music band called Anuradha Pal's Recharge for an audience of 400,000 people. She has performed on All India Radio and serves on the panel of Indian Council for Cultural Relations. In 2017, she performed for over 1 lakh villagers in Balgram, Sangli, Maharashtra, and serves as the brand ambassador for Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Yojana. Please join hands in welcoming Pandita Anuradha Palji.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and welcome to everyone across the world who's seeing this program.
We are truly blessed to have, a professional tabla player, I would say a trailblazer here, perform here. You're a tabla guru, a tabla maestro, and you have these accolades and awards that are, it's just awe-inspiring. But how did your journey begin? What inspired you to take up tabla as an instrument, and what support system did you have growing up, and what encouragement did you get?
So I just wanted to, I don't come from a musician family. So my parents were professionals, truly professionals in their own world, in their own field. My father was a doyen of the pharmaceutical industry, Debopriya Pal, and my mother was a painter and a writer, Ila Pal. And both of them saw that, I think, when I was a child, my mother, of course, she used to sing. So hearing her, I felt like learning classical vocal. And it seems when I was a child, I was the only time, when I would keep listening to music all the time. I mean, I went to concerts. My parents took me to great concerts of Vilayat Khan Sahab and, just about all the top musicians. And from the time I was, I think, literally 3 weeks old, I was attending concerts. So I think that music all going into my thing, plus my grandmother was a doyen in the sense she was actually you could say a benefactor of the arts, very much into music, art, sculpture, writing, poetry, literature, you name it, because of the school that my grandfather created, Shri M.T. Vyas, and which was all about, it was a very extraordinary school, and with many trailblazing efforts in the school. That's a whole different subject. In fact, the book on my grandfather is going to be released very soon, and on the 7th of November. So coming to so that was literally like an inspiration when I heard all these great artists, and I said, okay, I want to learn music. And I started learning classical vocal. And then I felt more and more inclined to the rhythmic aspect, in the sense when I was singing, I was able to actually figure what is the tal or the sum and the khali of the composition naturally. And then somebody said, I think you seem to be rhythmically inclined, so you should learn tabla. And that's how I thought I would learn. But of course, my teacher who was teaching my brother, he refused to teach me. He said, you're a girl, you can't play. It's not something for men, for women or girls to play. And well, I insisted, I persisted on my own, learned on my own. And then I started, so that was when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I started learning on my own. And then, of course, I think several weeks or months later, when that teacher accidentally heard me, that's when he said, oh, you actually can play well. So then he started actually teaching me. And I started performing when I was 9 years old. On my first performance actually was on the National Doordarshan, or the National Television Broadcasting Service. And then I did a couple of performances with my brother. Then I started performing in festivals. Then I started performing with like accompanying well-known maestros like Ustad Sultan Khan Sahab, uh, uh, Brij Narayanji, Hariprasad Chaurasia ji, all these great maestros. I started accompanying them and playing all over the country with them. So that journey literally started me on. This is how my tabla journey started. Pretty much accidentally, I would say, that I got into performing, that I got into learning the tabla, because it was a no-no from the society's perspective. And that's how I started it.
Well, that is very inspiring. It's taking your art to the next level. And if you were performing at the age of 9, I can only imagine the amount of practice, the amount of dedication and hard work that must have gone into it, along with, of course, incredible talent. You mentioned that there was gender bias, and it's it's perhaps predominantly tabla as an instrument is predominantly played by men. But you have been a trailblazer. You opened the doors for other artists, not just women artists, but other people inspired by you. So you've also formed this Tri Shakti band, which was perhaps in 1996, if I'm correct. That by itself, to have an all-women's band, and you've also been a trailblazer. You've been a music composer for an acclaimed Bollywood film called Gajagamini, and you composed an entire tabla composition in the background, right? Can you tell us about all of these things? What got you started, and what kept that motivation alive to find a path when there's gender bias?
I would say my parents too were great motivators and inspiration in my journey, because I think they, being thorough professionals, made sure that I was completely dedicated in my professionalism. In the sense, most people consider professionalism as commercialism, when you charge money. But what I was inculcated was that if you have to be dedicated to your art, which means practice to that, long hours, which means no matter what the problem, you go and perform, which means, say for example, whether there was a curfew, whether there was a riotous situation, whether there was a flight cancelled or a train cancelled, somehow I made it to the concert. And that professionalism, or that commitment, or the dedication to practice, that was inculcated as a child. And of course, my learning from great masters like Ustad Anuradha and Ustad Zakir Hussain further fueled my desire for perfection, desire to achieve, and achieve not just name, but the perfection was what I was always very keenly working for, and thinking about the music, trying to grow the music, trying to think out of the box, try to innovate, because I had a very wide exposure and very wide training, and education was very emphasized in my family, because my parents were super intelligent and super achievers as well. So it was mandatory that the academics and the sports and the music go hand in hand, and the personality development and sort of sensitivity is developed. That was inculcated. And then that's how I think also my getting into, that's how I decided that I would make a band called Sri Shakti, because I was facing a lot of challenges. While on one hand, there were these great musicians who were asking me to play with them, but it was very, very, at times this way is, very hard, because I would perform and I would not get paid as much as the other male musician, or maybe my sound would be turned down, or maybe, funny things like that, or some other kinds of, methods to just pull me down, or politics, or just spread wrong rumors about me. So people tried every trick in the game to pull me down. But I think that's where my being completely dedicated helped, and my being in love with the tabla helped, because for every kind of a challenge or every kind of a problem, I knew that practicing would be the elixir for me to get over that negative situation. And in that context, I set up a band called Stree Shakti, which is India's first all-female Hindustani Carnatic combination band. And I also did something new in that, which was combining the vocal, instrumental, and percussion uh, at a time when things were completely, uh, there was a hierarchy: the vocal first, the instrumental second, and the percussion last. That was the way it was. There was a hierarchy. And then so I wanted to blur those lines, because I believe that there should be teamwork and collaboration, and it's about give and take. It's not about one-upmanship. Music is about, coming together of souls. And so that's why I formed Stree Shakti. And it ended up becoming it made a huge statement of women having arrived, of the girls finally getting their own voice, of that unified strength of female empowerment, and which made a huge statement. It kind of stirred many hornets' nests, and made people feel like sometimes the men would feel a little unhappy about that. But they respected me inwardly for the effort and the kind of hard work that I was putting in to make sure other girls were also coming up along with me. So it was not just about me, and it was not just about furthering my music and my career, but it was also about basically developing the field and opening the doors of opportunity to young musicians as well as girls. And I think that helped also, like so many times when I meet, there are times when I go to concerts and people, and sometimes I meet people down in the lobby waiting for me, and they say, this girl is starting to become a doctor, but just put your hand on her head, because when she sees you, you're her big icon, and when she sees you doing this, she feels that, okay, we are not from a very advantaged family, but when we follow you and we are so inspired by what you have done, and this inspires her to break her shackles and realize her potential. And I think that was those are those moments that are very should I say satisfying, and where you feel good that, okay, you made some contribution, whatever little bit, and you can keep hoping to sort of make some difference in this world. And that's my effort that I keep trying to do.
No, I think you are the true embodiment of women's empowerment. To think of justice, equality, overcoming gender bias, and even economic empowerment, right? As you mentioned, getting paid for what is rightly due. All of these are fights that we have, that women have had to literally pave a path, and you've been instrumental in doing it in, the field of Indian classical music. So it's.
I remember one of the funniest comments I heard from somebody, and the person said, "Why do you need to be paid? You're a girl." This was the comment, I exactly quote unquote, and I said, well, I have to pay my own bills as well, and I have to look after my own self. And he said, but you can get married to somebody who'll look after you. I said, sorry, if I want equality, I must give equally, and I must be on my own feet. And which is why I also composed an anthem for the Ministry of Women and Child called, this was an anthem on female empowerment. And actually this came about in I was doing a concert tour of Europe, and where we were doing about 15 or 18 concerts all over Europe and UK, and as a sort of a celebration of that tour, because it was the 20th year, we were I was asked by the Ministry of Women and Child to compose an anthem, and so I wrote like this, like खुद को तू पहचान दे, खुददारी को चूम ले, पढ़कर अपनी पहचान बना, स्त्री शक्ति की मिसाल बने, which means खुद को तू पहचान दे, give yourself an identity, पढ़कर खुद को तू पहचान दे, खुददारी को चूम ले, embrace self-reliance, पढ़कर अपनी पहचान बना, educate yourself and make your own identity, स्त्री शक्ति की मिसाल बने, become an example of स्त्री शक्ति or woman empowerment. So, and then of course the anthem goes on there. It speaks about the struggles that women have to go through and how our prayer that women actually become contributors to the world at large. So this anthem was taken up by the Women and Child Ministry and made as their anthem for the Nari Shakti campaign. And of course, it was very gratifying to also be called Bharat Ki Lakshmi by Modi ji himself. So I was really in for a surprise last year when I got a tweet from the Prime Minister calling me as the Bharat Ki Lakshmi.
That is an achievement. Congratulations. That was
Thank you so much.
Very powerful words. I love the anthem and very relevant to the entire theme of our celebrations here, women's empowerment.
Absolutely.
You've also been an innovator. You're a trendsetter. Your Jugalbandi, you're very, it's inspiring, it's creative, it's very playful, and you've stuck to the tradition and discipline of Indian classical music. So how did you come about with this whole concept of Jugalbandi?
Okay, so the concept of the whole idea of the word Stri Shakti, that name was actually given by my mother, and the name Jugalbandi with myself, this was actually given by my husband. And I'll tell you how this happened. When I started doing these things, these Jugalbandis, it was a rather funny story, and I'll tell you this. I was called by the college principal to present a program for the college day. And he was very fond of classical music. And so he said, you must play for our college day and, for this. So I said, sir, they will not listen to me because they are used to the rock and that kind of music. And this is different. So I don't think they're going to listen. So he said, well, you have the ability to hold an audience. I've seen you perform and you can hold an audience. And I insist absolutely that you have to perform. So he didn't give me a choice. And then as I was getting onto the stage, I thought of a composition which was very relevant to the scene that any normal college person might experience. And that was really actually a takeoff from my own life, because I was already performing since I was 9 years old. And when I was in college, I was performing like 4 times, 5 times in a week, plus traveling so much. So sometimes it would become very hard for me to make it in time for that early morning lecture at 7 o'clock, right? So the story was that my mother's trying to wake me up, and I would be sleepy and lazy, and I'll say, let me sleep for a while, and she's like getting angry, look at the time, go and study, and then we have a conversation, and she says, get up, and I say, let me sleep, my hands are hurting, let me sleep. And then she gets angry and she sends me to college. So this was a story that I came up with right then on the wings when I was waiting to perform in that college function. And it was a story I made up and the composition that I made up on the spot there. And that composition, it literally caught people by surprise, because here they were thinking, here's this boring person who's going to play tabla. That was the thought process. And here I made a story for them which they could instantly connect with. And a happening that also was happening probably in their lives, where they were finding it hard to get up and all that. So it made that instant connect. And they loved it. And that 5 minutes time that I was given to perform actually kept extending to 15 to 20 minutes, because they asked for more and more, and I kept making some more compositions on the spot and played it for them. Now, that idea remained in my mind, and I worked on it over years. And when I got a chance to play for in the Commonwealth Festival for Queen Elizabeth, and I got a chance to play for Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, this was they were all these heads of state in the Commonwealth Festival, and here I was invited to perform a tabla composition. And I said, how can, for such eminent dignitaries, how do I make a connect? So that's when I made a composition called Talking Heads, because they were the heads of the states, heads of those states. And so I made a composition called Talking Heads, and they loved it as well. So this is how that whole idea developed. It was very completely on the spot, like fresh out of the oven. And at every point it was like I was just creating it, and people liked it. And so then that idea went ahead further, it germinated, and then I said, okay, let me just develop more, think about this more. How about if I put in Krishna ki Tal? So like the Leelas of Lord Krishna are so beautiful. There are so many different kinds of stories around him. And he's the god of love, of romance, of so many beautiful things, right? The whole concept of Thumri and Kathak has come from Lord Krishna and his Leelas. And I said, how about if we take some of those Leelas and take it into the tabla language and make stories around that? So I have composed stories on Kaliya Mardan, for example, how Lord Krishna kills the demon snake, or on Makhan Chori, or how he steals the butter, and his Jugalbandi with his mother. So stories like that, or with Kans, or with Chanur Mushrik, stories like that, or things like Ardhanareshwar. That was another thing which I decided to compose, that all of us have the feminine and the masculine aspect. And how can we combine these two aspects and present that in a storyline? So that's also what I am presenting in my Tabla Jugalbandi in the Triveni Festival, where this is a new innovation of mine actually, where Ardhanareshwar is Lord Shiva, the Mahadev, and how he's a combination of Shiva and Shakti, and how those two things come together in two rags and two tablas. So that is my concept of Anuradha Pal in Tabla Jugalbandi with herself. So where the traditional and the contemporary both come together. So there's a union of several subjects, several ideas, several thought processes which actually come together in my Tabla Jugalbandi. So what I'm going to present for you is going to be a short one. It will not be the entire thing for paucity of time, but this is definitely going to be a different experience. I think
our audience is going to be fortunate. This is, you've composed it and you're bringing it to us. So it's a demonstration of your innovation and making the traditional, art forms, music, very relevant to today's generation, which is more of, a stop and go generation. They don't literally have patience to hold on to things, and it takes time for anything to come up to this. But if you're making it relevant, I think it's good for the younger generation to get hooked on and maybe learn from you.
In fact, that's why I formed my fusion band Recharge. And that was again because I was invited to the New England Conservatory in Boston as an artist in residence, and it was a great opportunity for me to not only share my 2 cents of knowledge, but also to get a lot of knowledge from the exposure of jazz, African, Latin, different kinds of world music, and gamelan, and so much of different kinds of music. So I said, when I was in the New England Conservatory and when I was in Boston, I would listen to so much of that music, play with so many people, try to understand their music. So all those influences and that training which I got is what I tried to put into my band Recharge. Because it was, and that's how I started really exploring the idea of multi-percussion also, and playing, different instruments like djembe and darbuka, uduku, and so many others. Out of that deep interest in percussion and deep interest in being able to convert the information that I had about tabla and about the Indian percussion system, be it the Carnatic Tala Shastra or the Hindustani Tala Shastra, combining all those elements as well as the traditional repertoire of the tabla, of the 5 or 6 gharanas. So combining that repertoire and putting all that information on different instruments so that one could explore sounds and rhythmscapes in different ways. So literally, because my mother is a painter, I look at, and I used to paint also as a child. So I look at rhythm as a kind of a canvas. I look at music as, so, like if you hear my album Recharge Plus or Get Recharged, you will see me actually layering this. The sounds are layered. There are probably, I think, 30 or 40 layers of percussion, and plus, of course, the vocals and the bass guitar and a whole lot of other sitar, flute, all that. But in addition to that, the percussion actually plays a role of an evocative expression, where the percussion is the sort of the driver of that emotion. So my idea was that when people underrate percussion, or when I was a child, or when I was even now, there are people who will simply dismiss the tabla and say, no big deal about the tabla, it just sounds the same. But that's because they are either ignorant or unable or incapable of opening their mind out to that percussion. So which is what I felt that, okay, let me try if in this way I can get some more respect for the tabla and for percussion at large. So this is another effort of mine. And also when I did Gaj Gamini, the music for M.F. Husain's film, that was a huge learning experience for me. And because, when a great painter like M.F. Husain makes a film, he thinks of it as a canvas. He thinks of it as a multi-layered, multi-dimensional painting. Because for him, each set is a combination of paintings and all those transformational ideas that his brilliant brain only can fit in. I mean, so that brilliant brain, I got an opportunity to actually learn a lot from Hussain Sahib as well, because he was my mother's guru. and I have seen him from the time I was a child, and I helped him mix his palette and clean the brushes and done all that seva as well. So wo bhi ek aashirwad mila hai, in addition to the musicians and my gurus who I learned from and was so inspired by. I was very inspired, and I still am, when I see paintings. For example, when I go to when I go to see Impressionist painters, or see Rodin, or I see a Metropolitan Museum of Art, if I go to New York, there's no way I will not go to the Met, So that is something which I draw a lot of inspiration from as well. Other forms of art, music, literature, whatever.
Yeah, I think that shows in the music you produce. It's really, I would say your success exemplifies that you've broken barriers, and through hard work and dedication, you can just, make anything happen. So I think this is a perfect example of that. And, Anuradha Palji, as I was saying, your success it demonstrates women's empowerment. I would like to ask you for any final words as we conclude our talk here today or any advice to all those young artists out there, especially women artists. What what we learn from you is, no matter what the obstacles are, just keep working hard and you'll get there. But anything else that you would like to share that might inspire them?
I have always lived life on my own principles, without compromising on my morals, on my values, without compromising on my, it's not like the means is not important. For me, the journey is important, but the means is also very important. The ethics, the honesty, the transparency of things. That is a very important aspect of my upbringing. And I fortunately share the same values with my husband, who has very, very high standards and values as well. And I think very often I have had to sacrifice on opportunities because I did not want to compromise with myself. And I think that is something which I have no qualms about saying that, I'm proud to be sticking to my principles. I'm proud to be honest in my work. And yes, because some people can say because of this, maybe I could have, if I had compromised, maybe I would have been much more successful. Maybe I would have had a lot more concerts. No doubt about that, definitely. But I don't have any regret about that, because I think when I get up in the morning, I want to see my face and feel proud about my heritage as a musician, and as a daughter and as a wife. And I want to be proud of those principles. And in that context, I actually started, a fundraiser very recently, which is called Kala Ke Sang, and where the idea literally was because since lockdown happened in India since March, there's been no work for musicians. Everything is closed because the tourism is off, and we were also in lockdown stage from 22nd March, and we still are pretty much no concerts happening, nothing. So I felt that, I was very, I was continuously being called by a lot of the folk and the tribal musicians that, the folk musicians who I had worked with in my third band, Sufore, which is Sufi folk recharged with classical music. That's the third band I also started. So that's when I started this fundraiser. And I'd be proud to tell you that October 21st is actually my father's birthday, but his birth anniversary. He's not with us, and I lost both my parents in quick succession, unfortunately. But we have today actually been able to till now give monetary help to over 100 musicians, monetary help as well as food ration for over 40 to 50 musicians, and tribal, folk, devotional, classical musicians, as well as the instrument makers. So this has been another thing that I did, and I'm happy to say that this has been done with a lot of honesty and due diligence of the musician. And yes, we are still working at it, try to get help out to the musicians. So I request all of you to please donate, because we are, we have a long list of musicians still remaining to help, and we need all the help that we can get. So my website is www.anuradhapal.com/kalakesang. Or you can just go to the KKS tab on my website, www.anuradhapal.com, and there's easy to contribute. You can then send a bank transfer or credit card or mobile wallet or whichever convenient way you want to send money. And there's a tax benefit of 50% rebate on that as well. So this is literally, this is my humble contribution to society, and so this is another thing which I'm involved with. And then of course I have my workshops, my tabla classes and rhythm rider classes going on. So how to become a rhythm rider, that is also going on. So there are many things that I'm involved with, and love to share more and more with you.
Wonderful. Anuradha Palji, this was enlightening. You've achieved a lot, you've given back a lot, and you continue to grow in your field. And on behalf of Vibrnz and the Triveni Music Festival that you're a part of, I hope we have a wider reach for the beauty and the tradition of Indian classical music that teaches. I think who you are today is your parents, your art form, your gurus. So and as you summed up, we don't have to compromise on who we are. The ethics and the principles matter. So in that,
and also I would like to mention that in addition to my parents, gurus, husband, and so many other friends who have been influencers and inspirations in my life, I would also like to credit the musicians I worked with. All the musicians that I played with, from Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia to Shiv Kumar Sharma ji to Pandit Jasraj ji to everybody, Ustad Sultan Khan, so many musicians who I played with since I was 11, 12, 13 years old, and I continue to play with them and the young maestros. From each of them I have learned, from each of them I have been inspired, and from each of them I have learned how to continuously be in search of excellence as a student of music. So this is something which I thank all these great people for their inspiration, and also Lata Mangeshkar ji for being a very, very huge inspiration in my life.
Wonderful. There you go. You summed it up. I think it's the collaborative spirit. We are celebrating the goddess, Durga, but we also have the goddess in us, and that is represented by the hard work, the talent, the collaborative spirit, and all of the other things that we as women, do in our everyday lives. So thank you so much, Anuradha Palji. It was a true pleasure having you, and can't wait to listen to your performance and the Jugalbandi with yourself. I encourage everybody to go to Anuradha Palji's website and take advantage of the numerous workshops and giving back initiatives that she has spearheaded. So with that, we close our talk today, and I hope you get to enjoy all the performances. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you very much. Namaskar, and thank you to Vibrnz once again.